My name is Tom Weatherston, and I directed the theater and taught English at New Albany High School in New Albany, Indiana, for nearly 40 years. And one of the wonderful experiences that I had was a project called the Classroom Theater, which we established. And don't ask me what year it was, because I'm not good with numbers. I just can't remember. But it came about because, we had reached a level that was doing very well. We were being judged by an audience not made up of only parents. Parents are not a good adjudicator of what they see, because they love their children and they love to see their children on the stage. So I felt confident in taking on a new project, and it came about in a rather strange way. In those days, every teacher during the summer was expected to do something to advance their teaching qualifications, their background. We had to get a few hours added to our credits. And this summer, Ed Gerlitz was having a class on television teaching. He had taught social studies as augmented by a television program. And this was done in the annex, which was an old building that was used as a space for New Albany High School. It was some distance away. It was in the next block. An old building constructed in 1890 something or other, with 4 classrooms on the first floor and 4 classrooms on the second floor. And these were big rooms, maybe a third larger than the average classroom at the time. And so we were watching, we had heard Ed tell about his experience teaching with television, and we were watching a television program. Well, it was summer, and it got warm, and the room was darkened, and we in the audience were a little on the drowsy side, until in this video they showed a live performance of several scenes from Miller's Death of a Salesman. And slowly our audience became much more interested, and they perked up, and things were really moving successfully. And it reminded me that plays, the theater, was designed to perform before a live audience. And then I got thinking about our English classes at New Albany High School, and I was curious to find out how much of each literature book was devoted to drama or to plays. I had the books that I taught from, so it was easy to count pages, but I also went to the bookstore and got out all of the other literature books that were being used at the time. And I did the same thing there. And I think I came out with an average of somewhere between 14 and 17% of the whole book was devoted to drama, which, as I said, was intended to be acted live on a stage in front of a live audience. So I thought, why can't we do that here during school hours? And the only thing that made me feel that it would work was the fact that in those days we had an activity period every day, 30, 35 minutes between third and fourth periods. And I think it was like between 10:30 and 11. And this time was called homeroom. And you went to your homeroom, you had a homeroom teacher, and it was done by classes. It was all the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors. And there was a time that we had freshmen at New Albany High School. And business would be conducted for the class. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, there were club meetings. You could sign up for 2 clubs, any student at school, and those met on the homeroom period of Tuesday and Thursday. And pep sessions would be held during this time, generally on Friday. That kind of activity went on, and I figured, well, why couldn't we do a play that might be the one that the students are studying in their literature class, or related in some way, and break it down, of course, and say into 3 acts, and maybe do act 1 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 3 on Thursday or Friday, or however it would fit best into the schedule for the whole school. And I took my idea to my principal, and he was very understanding, and he said, yes, let's give it a try. And the next thing was to find a place for this. Well, as it happened, the ideal place happened to be the room right across the hall from where I had experienced the television teaching class that summer. It was called A8, Annex 8, second floor of the Cora Martin Annex. And it was a large room, and it had 2 exit doors, the one from the main hall, and also one that led into a kind of storage room between A8 and the next one toward the front of the building. And that could be our backstage. A disadvantage was there would be no access as far as entrance and exit from stage right. We built a platform, or we had built, I designed the program, the setup, and it was a 2-step up platform of about 12 feet across and 5 feet deep, perhaps. And that meant that directly in front of the stage, we had elevated 3 steps of audience, and one on the floor. And over on house right, there was room for 2 rows, small rows. Then in the corner by the entrance door from the hall, we had built a little elevated platform, which was used for a light control and sound control, and 1 or 2 people could stand up there. It was not enclosed. And then underneath that was a space with a door where my desk went. My desk would, when I was teaching a standard class, would be on the stage, but when we were performing, it went inside this small closet kind of thing. And so we started. We had open auditions. Any student in the school could audition for a show here. And one other thing that was very, very helpful, I had a club, and it was called Student Theater. And I asked my principal if that club could be made into my homeroom, because we would be working on this project during many, many homeroom periods. And he said, yes, that could be done. So I had sophomores and juniors and seniors, not sophomores, excuse me. We didn't take them until they were into the club until they were juniors. So I had juniors and seniors in there. And here's the way it would work. We would pick a show, and we did 15 full-length productions during the history of the classroom theater. And the room would seat about 90 people, which meant about 3 classes could be scheduled at one time. And we would, I would prepare a schedule for, we would be running as long as it took to provide this experience for all of the literature classes on each level of sophomores and juniors. And that way, at the end of the year, every student would, in those 2 classes, would have seen at least one full-scale production in the classroom theater. So on a daily basis, we had to provide the office with a list of all of those students who would be attending that week. And so students from student theater would go to the teacher who was scheduled for that week and get a list of all of their students who would be coming for that week's production. And they would put together this list and take it to the office. It would be duplicated, and this would become the list that would go out to the whole school. So when these kids didn't show up for homeroom or a club, they were excused because they were attending the classroom theater. And the people who were acting in the show had a 5-minute advantage over everybody else, because at the end of 3rd period, the PA came on and we got the announcements, the daily announcements. And at that point, it was agreed that the people that were working classroom theater could get up and go out and head for the theater and have that 5 extra minutes to get there before the multitudes started coming at the end of the announcements. We worked with props, full props, costumes, no makeup. There was no time for makeup. And the bell would ring and people started moving. And I was there, and my first job was to help get everybody in. And one of the things I remember saying over and over again was, fill every seat in the row, please. Don't leave any empty seats. We're going to need them all. And we had the students who were doing the attendance, they had a clipboard with a sign-in sheet for each row. And it would start over on house left and move across, and the students were instructed, sign your name, pass it on. And then these student theater kids who were working the house, the attendants, they would collect all of those, and let's see, there would be 5 of those clipboards. And then during the show, they would sit out in the hall and take attendance, as it were. They would check off everybody who was there, and then they prepared the list of those people who were not present and not on the absence list for that day, and that was turned into the office. I stood during the performance by the railing that separated the elevated audience from the aisle leading to the main entrance. And everybody else was trained. They knew what they were doing. They were prepared. It had to be done now because we had timed it that we could get it in that 30 minutes if we weren't disrupted from our normal schedule. So there would be a student running lights and perhaps a student running sound if they were if that was demanded in that production. And when everybody was in, I would try to make clear to the audience, you are always welcome to think what you choose about what you're going to see, but you must not do anything that's going to stand in the way of the folks sitting next to you or around you. My advice was turn your thoughts to something else if you don't appreciate what's going on here for you. And really, we had no problems. And the show would begin, the lights would go down, the lights would come up, and at the end, bell rang, we were finished, and they went out to the beginning of fourth period. And our kids put everything away. My desk had to come out of its little closet up on the stage, and fourth period class would begin. So this would be repeated then 2 more times for that particular week's production. There was only one show that I remember that we had to, we did 4 days, and that we did Julius Caesar. And I taught Julius Caesar, I taught sophomore English, but I wasn't the one that suggested it. It was another teacher, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. So I had to cut the script down to fit, but we did 4 sections instead of the traditional 3. And that's what's done with almost all of Shakespeare wherever you see it today. It's not as it was done in the Globe so many years ago. Well, the idea caught on, and we developed a group of performers who had wonderful, wonderful experiences on stage. And I had always felt that a student in a theater program learns more from a performance than they do from any one rehearsal or read through or whatever. And here we were giving our kids, we would play one show 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And there was no time to be scared or frightened. There was a time to do the job. It was kind of theater by the bell, and that's the way movie making is. They want it now, and that's when you do it. Uh, it has affected me in that long years after this this project. I'll have to tell you how we lost it, but anyhow, I think I judge high school shows that I see today, and I'll think, oh, it should have been better than that. And I think I'm basing that on the experience that we were able to give our kids during the days of the classroom theater. You see, this was ongoing, and so while we were doing this in the day, there was another show in rehearsal and in performance in our main auditorium. So the experience, I think, was invaluable to a student. I'd like to run down for you the list. This is not chronological, but these are shows that we did in the classroom theater. Our Town, The Skin of Our Teeth, The Crucible, All My Sons, Joan of Lorraine, Julius Caesar, An Enemy of the People, Three Angry, it was men, but we made it jurymen, I think. The Corn is Green, The Diary of Anne Frank, The Miracle Worker. We put together 3 one-act plays once, which we called Three to Compare and Contrast. In a Light of Words was another show that we put together for clippings from other plays. Look Homeward, Angel, and the Spoon River Anthology. So they, as a group, were not entertainment only, fun comedies, light, fluffy stuff. It was a play that was written by a qualified author, and there was much to be learned by doing it and much that you could learn from seeing it. I had an experience just this summer. I met a man who was a student when I was teaching, and he came up to me and said, I want to thank you for when we went to classroom theater and we saw Our Town, and I appreciated it greatly. And this was like, 30 years ago or more. Also, I was in Kroger, and I was walking down the aisle, and this clerk came up to me and said, you're, and I said, Tom Weatherston. Yes, you did the classroom theater. Yes. He said, oh, that introduced me to theater, and it's been wonderful. And those are the kinds of things that are extremely meaningful to a retired teacher. We lost the classroom theater, first of all, because we lost the annex. It was deemed to be a fire hazard. It had a wide open 2 stairwells, and the interior was wood. The steps were wood. So we moved over onto the stage in the auditorium, and we had it now. We could do this because there had been additions to New Albany High School. The stage with the auditorium was actually the girls' gymnasium. And when we did a show there, we only got the stage 1 week to ourselves, the week of production. Up until that time, we'd have a rehearsal, then you had to put everything away, because there was going to be the girls' gym classes the next morning. Well, I remember we did the 12 Angry Men there. We did Diary of Anne Frank there. And it worked quite well, but it was different. Then we lost the homeroom period. The pressure was on for tests. We must raise scores in these areas, so we must test more. So we need more classroom time. We do away with the homeroom period. From my point of view, that was sad. In recent years, I've realized that not only were we giving our theater students a tremendous experience with classroom theater, as well as the students who were in the audience, but we were also training audiences, as if to say we were teaching Audience 101. And we at times we sold a main stage show to our high school students. They bought a ticket and they came and sat in an auditorium that seated 880. And we did have teachers stood on the outside aisles, and I sat to the side on the stage, on the apron of the stage, on a stool, but they were watching their own student friends on the stage, and there would be the tendency to, make fun, laugh when it's not funny, and so on. And it worked. And I would kind of doubt that could be done today. We educated the students at New Albany High School in many different directions, and it was valuable. And that leaves me with a memory that is treasured. I wanted to tell the story of the classroom theater so that someone else might be interested someday and look it up. We'll be on YouTube, and there are 2 other YouTube films in this series, I guess you could call it. One was my recollections from working on the showboat Majestic as a student at Hiram College, and another one was on the student theater experience. Thank you very much for listening.